about is climate change in this unit. And so what do you think about climate change and what questions come to mind? So you might want to pause the video here and just think about, do I have questions about climate change? What are they? And the other thing we're thinking about as we go into this unit is that school kind of trains us to get answers, but not only answers, but right answers. We're penalized for wrong answers. And the thing about science is we need to stay curious and we need to ask questions. And this unit's going to be super important about asking questions, lots of questions. And so the themes of our questions will drive our learning. So our work today is about relearning how to ask good questions. And so we're going to be doing a process called Question Formulation technique, and there's a couple of rules that we need to follow today. We'll be given some sort of prompt or phenomena scenario to focus our questions, and then your job is to ask as many questions as you can. You can't stop to judge, discuss, or answer those questions. Most of the time we're going to be like, oh, that's a bad one. Nope, just write it down, let it go, and keep going. We've already been judged enough. Don't judge yourself. So keep going, even if you think it's a bad question. We're going to write those questions down exactly as they're stated in our mind. The one thing we can do is if you write a sentence down, this is stupid, okay? Then you can change that into a question. Why do I think this is stupid? Okay, so if you write a statement, change that then to a question. So we're going to practice. So you want to have something to write on for this practice. And I'm going to ask you to also time yourself afterwards for asking questions. So you might want to have a timekeeping device like your cell phone or something else available. So where you're going to go is to this video called Time for Bed, Joey. I think if I do YouTube right, it should pop up right here right now. Go ahead and click that video link and then come back to this one when you're done. If you are writing questions during the video, that's fine. But just remember, afterwards I want you to write for 3 more minutes. Ask as many questions as you can. Don't stop to judge, discuss, or answer those questions. And write the questions down exactly as stated in your mind and change any statements into questions. So go watch that video. All right, warriors, if you came back here to this video, go ahead. If you've not done so already, set your timer for 3 minutes. These are the rules. Write as many questions as you possibly can. All right, so I hope you're back. I hope you practiced because you are going to have to do that for class as well, which is a formative work. So if you did not, go do that now because you'll need to do the practice first to make it easy and less intimidating. But now what I want you to do is look through your questions and look for closed-ended and open-ended questions because different questions will have different uses for us. We can use them for different things. So closed-ended questions are ones that have a one-word yes-no answer. Open-ended questions need an explanation of some sort. So you're going to go through the questions that you wrote and mark them as open or closed. So for one example is, will this work? Is that a closed-ended or open-ended? Hopefully you came up with closed-ended because I can say, yes, this is going to work, or no, this is not. Example number 2, how will this fit in? Closed-ended or open-ended? Hopefully you're deciding that one's more open-ended because I'm going to have to think about how will this work? Where am I going to stick it? How am I going to use it? What good's it going to do me? You know, you're starting to kind of think about those kinds of things when you try to answer that question. So that one's definitely more open-ended. So go pause the video here and go through and mark your questions as open-ended or closed-ended. All right, so next, the reason why we did that is because each kind of question has advantages and disadvantages to those types of questions. So think right here for just a second. What are some advantages to closed-ended questions? Hopefully you came up with something like easy, quick, doesn't take a lot of time. I can Google the answers and there's usually like one right answer, right? But then what are some of the disadvantages to closed-ended questions? So think about that for just a second. So hopefully here you might have come up with, there's really no depth to the answer. There's no thinking required. You can't Google it usually. And sometimes it might just be a dead end, right? You can't find an answer. or there isn't an answer. So now, same thing. What are some advantages and disadvantages to open-ended questions? These are almost always opposites to the closed-ended questions. So open-ended question advantages is they have more depth, they're more complex, they have multiple answers, oftentimes they'll lead to more questions. But then again, the disadvantages kind of go hand in hand with that, right? It takes a lot of time, they're usually much harder, and they usually lead to more questions. And so the thing about those is we can leverage those questions to fit our uses. Sometimes we need a closed-ended question. We need a quick, fast answer. And sometimes we need a more open-ended question because we need a more in-depth answer. So what I want you to do is practice changing those closed-ended questions to open-ended questions for when we need them to change our question or change how we're asking something. And then also, I need you to change your open-ended questions to closed-ended questions. So you're going to just pick one. Pick an easy one of each kind that you marked on your practice work. So I took my questions, will this work and how this work. So will this work was a closed-ended question, and it's not that hard to switch that one, right? How will this work? Because now I'm starting to think about exactly the mechanics and the things I have to think about as I'm trying to make whatever this is into working. But also, you're also going to change an open-ended question to a closed-ended question. So where before I asked where will this fit in or how will this fit in, I'm now going to ask where will this fit in. So I can point to a calendar or point to a spot on a diagram or whatever, or in a story or a PowerPoint and say, this right here, this is where this fits. So take a second and go ahead and change one open-ended question to a closed-ended question. Okay, now that you're back, there in the rest of this PowerPoint, there's some sample videos about habitat loss. So in the video, you're just going to click on the links and you're going to go through some different examples of habitat loss so that you can see kind of what our focus of our climate change study will be. And then after you're done watching those videos, there's this Google form link. We want you to ask as many questions as you can. You are going to do this for 5 minutes. Your email address will be recorded, and this is a formative homework assignment. And this is what your work will be today. All right, make sure you ask a lot of questions. Don't judge yourself. Type them all in there. We know there's going to be weird ones. Just make sure they're school appropriate because everyone's going to see them. Do not judge your questions. Just get them out there into the world. All right, warriors, have fun.